Today on The State of Us, will federal checks for having children help or hurt? Well, according to the University of Chicago, they might not be everything that we've been promised. Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, and I'm joined today by your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson. And we're talking about the child tax credit payments, which started just recently. We've been promised and told about the benefits of these, which Lance and I openly professed back when they were originally proposed we thought might do some good. Well, there's some new research out from the University of Chicago that says they might not be everything that we thought they were going to be. They're going to do some good, but are they really going to do the most good for the money? And that's part of what we're going to look at today. But of course, before we get started, we have to know what the word of the day is.
Well, your friendly redneck liberal is a little qualmish about this. That's the word of the day, qualmish, 2 syllables. It's an adjective, Q-U-A-L-M-I-S-H, means having the nature of a qualm. So then you say, well, what is a qualm? Well, a qualm is a sudden, brief feeling of sickness, faintness, or nausea. A sudden feeling of uneasiness or doubt or a misgiving. So I'm a little qualmish about these. I mean, it sounds good on the surface, right? We're going to help out children. We're going to give more money to families with children. And that sounds good on the surface. But those of you who know me, that I'm not liberal enough that I want to take away the quality of hard work. And as this report shows, this new law may lean towards trying to convince people not to go to work. And so, do I think that working people need more money? You bet. I mean, we are talking about, that we are on record for a higher minimum wage, even if that brings higher prices, because that puts more money in families' pockets that have these children. Our study today that we have from the University of Chicago shows that, well, maybe people might quit working because they could get more money. That kind of flies in the face, makes me a little qualmish today. When I think about, well, we need to help children. I mean, let us know if you don't think so, right? But hopefully all of us agree that there is a poverty problem with young people in our country. And they don't have anything to do with it. They've been brought into this world and they're in a struggling situation. We need to help them so that they can become working, productive citizens of our society.
When I first read this, Lance, earlier today, dove deeper into it and found this research that just came out, I had a qualmish feeling, not for just the same reason that you mentioned, which I did have, some hesitations about and some easiness, but moreover that when we went to talk about this, right, we have this debate from time to time on the show, for those of you at home that don't know, about titling episodes, right? How do we title them so that all of you pay attention and actually tune in? And it seems inevitably that we title something that predispositions people to either think that we're going to have a conservative opinion on a topic or a liberal opinion on a topic. And it was just making me think today of this gentleman that I ran into, a doctor actually at a hospital a little bit back, that pulled up our podcast right there on the spot and said, it looks like you guys might lean a little bit conservative. And I'm like, dude, you read 3 episodes and you didn't listen to any of them. And you can't tell me that you know what we think. The reason I'm off on this tirade is because I think this episode today is just yet again another demonstration of what we're trying to do here, and saying that, look, there is research from a reputable institution out here that should all make us qualmish, right, about the reality of what this is. If you're a sensible human being and you're willing to examine facts, then it shouldn't matter. Like Lance said, we should all want to help children, right? I don't think there's any debate about that, at least not on this show. I mean, we're of the opinion that we should do what's best for children. When this was initially pitched, we kind of felt like, is this exactly what we should do? But let's see, right? Let's see what we learn. Well, here's what's happening right now, right? There's an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal linked at thestateofus.org And then it kind of sets the stage for us, right? The argument goes, and here it is, the federal government is conditioning families like mine, because this author, for full disclosure, has received their first $948 payment for having, well, the way he puts it, earning this money for having 4 children between the ages of 15 and 13, right? So the federal government is conditioning families like mine, referring to the author, to expect free money. When you see that cash in your account, the first thought is how to use it. It becomes a habit to see and spend extra money each month. Like many habits, it is liable to worsen. The problem extends far beyond my home. The families of nearly 60 million children are now receiving these new monthly payments, though many received a smaller annual tax break that was tied to work under the previous child tax credit. Some are struggling to make ends meet, but only 36% of these new payments are going to families in poverty. Did you catch that? Let me just read that again. Some are struggling to make ends meet, but only 36% of the new payments are going to families in poverty. The rest of the money is going to families like mine. And the point, of course, of the article is the author saying, I don't need this money, right? I'm fortunate enough that I can take care of my children. I don't need this extra $948 a month. I'm providing a good life for them. And the federal government doesn't need to give me any money. And the federal government's only providing this money to 36% of the people who realistically probably do need it, right? I mean, that 36% probably needs the help. So that's a different conversation. But the question becomes, well, why would you provide it to the other 64% who don't technically need it, right? And I know we're just using the poverty line there, and that's a whole separate debate. But that's where this research comes in, of saying that one of the thoughts or arguments was, well, you provide it to these other people because by offsetting, by giving them money to help cover some of their childcare expenses, right, they're going to have more time and therefore money to do other things that will be of benefit to society. The problem is, though, Lance, right, that this research is telling us that may not be what people do when they get the extra money.
To me, the problem is we have children living in poverty. And that's a sad state of affairs when they're going to bed hungry, cold, maybe without a bed, without enough blankets to stay warm in the winter, maybe no heat in the house, maybe no plumbing. And you think, wait a minute, this is 21st century. There's no way in America that happens. Yeah, it does. And sometimes it happens because the minimum wage in a state is $9 an hour, and it's like, or even in California where it's higher, it should be even more. I mean, again, if you're a believer of the minimum wage, right? A minimum wage means you should be able to live, not comfortably, but be able to pay your bills off of that. We don't have a minimum wage. So what we've done, since we can't get people to sign on as a majority to raising the minimum wage, it's like, well, now we're just going to give money to people. And that just really rubs me the wrong way. Because I understand, I've done it, I've talked to my children about it, I've talked to you about it. I know that I lived in the golden age of workers. That as I was coming up, opportunities were available to me to earn more money and to make a very, very good living. And I also spent judiciously and invested, and I've done very well. But as I look at my daughters now, who are millennials, they're in college educated, good paying jobs, didn't have a lot of debt to take on because of the job that I made and the investments that their mother and I made towards helping them with their education, plus the scholarships that they earned through hard work in school. They didn't have a lot of debt, but they're struggling to make it at white collar jobs because salaries aren't what they were when I was their age. And I think some of us older people need to stop saying and pointing to people and say, well, if you just work harder or take on an extra job or do this or do that like I did, then you could make it. Both my daughters work 2 jobs. And during the holiday season, sometimes 3 jobs. And they're not living the life that I led. And they don't have children yet.
And they're educated professionals,
and they're
right?
educated professionals. One has a master's degree and one has a PhD.
So they're well-educated professionals.
They're above average education-wise. But, oh, wait a minute. They're in the healthcare field and they're in education. not both things that we claim as a country, we value, but we don't pay the people who are actually doing the work. We don't pay them. So my point is, this sounds good. Okay, we can, and you know, if they had children, they'd really be struggling. They don't right now. So there's a need here. But is there a better way to fix the need than a way that, according to this second article, is going to take people away from work? That, to me, sends the wrong message. And that's my big concern. I'm right with this gentleman. I wouldn't have needed the money. I'm grateful that I wouldn't have needed the money to help raise my family. Would I take it? Who's not going to take money, right?
Yeah, I mean, if $900 just shows up in your bank account every month just because you have children, it's like, I mean, do I need it? Again, no. Am I going to be like, nah, you know, I'm not taking the $900?
And might I spend, you know, he's saving his, I might spend it, which would put it back into the economy and help things out and do other things. But is it helping child poverty? And that's the concern that this friendly redneck liberal has, is that we need to help children. And I know through helping the middle class, we're helping children, but we need to help the children that are going to bed hungry and going to bed without a bed.
The question boils down to, when you come to a numbers and cents thing, and this is what I want people to think about, right, as we're talking, is we've identified that, well, not we, the work has been done for us, in fairness, but basically the expanded child tax credit, if made permanent, and the reason this is a debate right now is, for those of you who don't know, this isn't permanent. This is part of the American Rescue Plan and, you know, a reconciliation process, and it's like, so is it going to stay around forever? It's going, if kept, right, if made permanent, it'll cost about $1.6 trillion over the next 10 years, okay? Now, the question becomes, from a dollars and cents standpoint, if we all say that children need help, which I think we agree with, especially children who are in poverty, right? Who, some states use different terminology. In the state of Ohio, the Department of Education classifies those children as economically disadvantaged. I think most of us would agree we should do something to help those people, right? Because we know we have workforce problems. We know that we need more people in the workforce. So we got to do something. And then to do something, we probably got to spend money. The question is this the best use of $1.6 million over 10 years? Or $1.6 trillion, over 10 years? Or is there something else we could do to help those children that we're identifying as the most in need of this money? And that's not rhetorical. I am asking, and we'd like your answer. Send us an email, podcast@thestateofus.org. What we're going to review here in just a moment is, what does the University of Chicago say about what this will actually do? Because I think that's important to discuss in order to answer the question, could it be spent some other way better, right? Because I think what we're going to see here is it reveals it'll do some good. It's just, is it the best expenditure of that money if we're all going to say, let's spend the money? What does the University of Chicago have to say, though? Let's find out. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. From the Becker-Friedman Institute for Economics at the University of Chicago, released on October 5th of 2021. Current proposals to expand the child tax credit would reduce employment by 1.5 million people and, as a result, reduce child poverty by only 22%. That's more than a third lower than the estimates that fail to account for employment reductions and fail to reduce deep child poverty at all. So the good news, right, in what I just read, is reduce child poverty by 22%. And I think we would all feel like reducing child poverty is probably a good thing. But as then noted, that's more than a third lower, more than 33% lower than the estimates, and it ultimately fails to reduce what they call, what the Economic Institute has termed, deep child poverty. We'll go a little bit more into this, Lance, but at a high level, right, it's a mixed bag, because what we've heard mostly so far and what an independent analysis by a third party, a reputable third party, has found are not really one for one.
They don't know for sure either. They've run the numbers, and this is what their study shows. So the truth is probably somewhere between what President Biden says and what they say. I mean, in all honesty, what makes you qualmish is that it shows that the money is not going into the hands of the people that need it. So is there a better way? This isn't an argument today. This isn't a discussion or a debate about whether or not help is needed. I think we both agree that help is needed, that there is child poverty, that there are things we need to do as a nation. How we solve that problem is where our discussion is. And when it's thrown out there that this is going to solve it, we should all take notice and say, well, really? Is just one thing going to solve it? And the answer to most of us would be no. So I guess my question to you, though, is this better if it goes down 22%? If it only goes in the hands of 36% of the people who actually need it? Is that better than nothing? And that makes me qualmish. I'm scared of that, okay? Because we live in an economically challenged area here in the Midwest. All of our county schools, every child, regardless of income right now, receives free breakfast and free lunch. And for the 75% of our students who are labeled economically disadvantaged by the state of Ohio, for many of them, that's the only 2 meals they get every day. So when we start to split hairs and say, well, this isn't going to help as much as they're saying it's going to, I understand that, and that makes me upset. What makes me even more upset, though, is if we take it away and there's nothing in its place. So not trying to push the conversation down the road, but before I get too upset that it's not going to help as much as they said it was in the beginning, I'm all for some help, because right now we're not giving any, or we weren't giving any. But explain to me, because it's got all the charts and graphs here, so that's your cup of tea. But explain to me how they're saying people are going to leave the workforce because they're going to get more money. Because to me, if I'm making $20,000 a year and I'm getting $2,000 per child, that's still $22,000. If I don't work, I'm getting $9,000 per child. Well, that's still only $9,000. $22,000 is more than $9,000. So why would I quit work? I know that's the way, when I read it, that's their presumption. They're saying people will end up, quote, air quotes there, folks, making more money if they quit work. Explain that, how they're coming to that conclusion, because that kind of threw me for a loop as I was reading this. How do they come to that conclusion?
So the way the current child tax credit works, right, the one that we're all used to up until just recently, is it is what we call an earned income tax credit, right? Which means that relative to you working and making money, you're going to earn a certain amount. Now, one of the main objections to this is that, for example, a working parent with 2 children receives $2,000 if she earns $16,000 and $4,000 if she earns over $30,000. So right there, what we have is the more money you make, right, the more you get in your child tax credit. Now, there's a fundamental issue here that I have with it, which is, well, don't the people that make less money need more to help their children and not the other way around? So that, I agree, that is something that we should address, right? The problem is the new system approaches it as a blanket, regardless of whether you work or not, right? So there's no requirement, because it's not an earned income tax credit. It's just a child tax credit, which means that there's really the only prerequisite is that you have a child that's under the age of 16. That's, if you have a child under the age of 16, you are eligible for this. You don't have to work. And
but
likewise,
you're not making more money than if you were working, are you?
Well, and then that would be a discussion about, how many kids do you have, and how can you, and how much were you making? And I think it's very scenario based. My general answer would be no.
But the cost of going to work, I have to pay for transportation, or I have to pay for parking in downtown, or I have to buy a certain set of clothes to go to work in, or whatever. So there's costs to going to work. So
which you've talked about a lot,
right? So their argument is that, well, it may be beneficial for people just to stay home.
The thinking behind the current program was, right, well, you can get more money if you make more money, which, we've talked about. That's, the snowball thing. But it was supposed to be an incentive to say, you should try to make at least this much a year, because then look how much you'll get from the government, in your child tax credit. And instead, what you have is, people that are already making more money are getting more money for their children, and people who make less money don't get as much.
We incentivized people going to work, and we're saying that didn't happen. So now we're going to incentivize people not going to work. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not trying to make it that simple, but that's what it seems like to me, and that's what makes me qualmish, is that I don't want anything. I want stuff to help children, but I don't want anything that can be argued to convince adults not to go to work to provide for their children. You want to make some extra money? Have an extra child. Have another child. Because that's what some people will do, and that's
the wrong reason to have a child.
I can't even begin on the number of levels, because the money you're getting from the government doesn't even come close to paying for what it costs to have a child, plus the mental and the physical and all the things that you have to do to bring that child up properly.
We need to do something, right? The question is, and I think the answer is, just for everybody, spoiler alert here, I don't think that this is the very best way to do it. Partly because, again, if nothing else, like Lance said, we don't need to overthink this too much. 64% of the people that get this money probably don't need this money. Right. And even if we're really generous and say, well, the poverty line, and really the poverty line is not a great indicator, because if you're making, $25,000 a year, can you really take care of a kid very well, and on. Right. We can do that argument. So let's just be generous and say 50%. Right. But even if we're being generous, you're telling me that we're going to give half of $1.6 trillion to people who don't need it. What? That doesn't sound like a very good use of the money, when I do believe, and I'm about to share some research with folks, when I do believe there's research that says, here's how we could spend the money that would be more effective. There is an assumption that the people you're giving the money to are going to be able to spend it in a way to benefit their child. What I'm trying to communicate is that we see generational poverty problems, right? And there's an assumption that if you give them this money, the money will benefit the child. And I think in some cases it will, right? I'm not saying that in every case it won't, but I think there's also this notion that the people who craft this stuff, they understand how money works, right? They understand that if I only have $20,000, I probably shouldn't go out and buy, a $2,000 TV. That'd probably be a mistake, because relative to my income, that just doesn't make sense. And a lot of you listening may feel that same way. And I don't think, and I want to be very clear, I don't think this is because people are stupid, okay? It's this whole thing that Lance and I have talked about a lot. You can't ask people to know what they don't know. If they've never been taught or shown this, it doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means that they've been in a generational cycle where that's how life is. That's what their parents did. That's what they do.
We don't teach money management anywhere in the public school system so that they can be exposed to it and start to learn some of the basic principles that you and I were brought up with.
So you write the check and we all feel better because we're putting money into the hands of the people that quote unquote need it. But the question is the money really, and that's what, right, the key note, I think the most important thing of the finding is, and it fails to reduce deep child poverty at all. And when you read further, they explain that what they mean by deep child poverty is generational child poverty issues. You're going to Band-Aid the problem, right? It will get better because there will be people who will use the money to help their kids get better clothes, maybe help get them into a better school, right? Maybe get them better school supplies, take better care of them at home. That's going to happen. The question is, they just got the money, right? But there was no teaching about, well, how do I, when I grow up, make sure that I'm not in a situation where I need the money? There's none of that in this. And I think to Lance's point, that's a big glaring problem with, you want to fix it, but what we're fixing is a symptom. We're not fixing the cause.
Are we fixing the symptoms by just handing somebody something? think of the old parable.
Well, because it's easy.
You teach,
right?
You give somebody a fish, they get to eat for the day. You teach them how to fish, they can eat for a lifetime.
Yes. Well, we don't even need the third segment because there you have it, right? That's the thinking here is because we're all about, and hopefully you've gotten that. And that's why I'm saying anybody that, rails on this episode for being conservative, we're saying we need to spend the money, right? This is a nice boilerplate, very simple to understand thing that for whatever the motivations are, right, which we can all judge and speculate on, but at the end of the day, whatever the motivations are, it's not going to do the most good relative to what we're about to share with you. So what is the thing that could do more good? Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll find out. Child poverty, something that hopefully everybody listening to the show agrees we should do something about. $1.6 trillion over 10 years. Is this really the best way to spend $1.6 trillion? We'll see what Lance thinks. I think most of you probably know what he thinks. My answer is no. I'm going to present one alternative option that I feel confidently and definitively based simply on, again, third-party, independent, nonpartisan research, I think clearly tells us would be a better investment.
Well, and that's what we're about, right? We're not going to just rail against something and not give you an alternative. If we're not in favor of something or we think it doesn't do as much good as needs to be done, we have another answer for you.
So full disclosure for our listeners, because we want to be honest with people, I help run, and Lance participates in, the running of a youth center here locally. Okay, and this is a free-to-access youth center for all students who are in grades 6 through 12 in the school district. So there's no income prerequisite. So a youth center is defined as a type of after-school programs. So what we're looking at here is research from the National After School Alliance, okay? National nonpartisan, Washington, D.C. based nonprofit that basically sole existence is to research and understand after-school programming, okay? And what I have pulled up is their most recent fact sheet on what their national research from 2020 tells them, okay? So this is the most up-to-date stuff we've got. And right here, I think this page alone should be enough of an argument to convince you, but what I'm highlighting on the left-hand side of the page here, which Lance can see, and again, linked at thestateofus.org, it's actually a 2-page. For many parents, after school is a lifeline that helps them work without having to worry and balance their schedule. 8 in 10 Americans say that after-school programs give them the peace of mind they need, and it helps them keep their jobs. Close to 3 in 4 parents believe that after-school programs reduce the likelihood that kids will engage in risky behaviors. 5 in 6 parents support public funding for after-school programs. The next thing I want to point out here is what happens to the students when they participate in after-school programs. 69% of students, almost 7 out of 10 students, improve their homework completion and class participation when they participate in after-school programs. 62% of students improve their behavior in class, and 1 in 2 students improve their math and reading grades. More than 70% of students in STEM after-school programs express more interest in and knowledge about careers in science. They also build essential skills such as perseverance and critical thinking. Now, if that all wasn't enough, what about the financial investment?
None of that makes me qualmish. That's all super stuff. It's
who doesn't want that stuff?
Parents like it. There is students perform better. Why aren't we doing it? Okay, tell us. Go ahead, Justin.
And if that wasn't enough, so if I put in my 1.6 trillion, Lance, what am I going to get? What's the money, right? Give me the numbers. Well, research shows that each dollar that we invest in after-school programs saves at least $3 by increasing kids' earning potential, improving kids' performance at school, and reducing crime and juvenile delinquency. So the number one thing is we increase their earning potential, right? So if we invest $1.6 trillion, do some quick math here for me. What is that? 4 trillion something that we're going to save. But if I can put in 1.6 trillion and save 4.8 trillion, and we already have the data, right? I mean, this is not hypothetical. This is based on, they looked at after school programs available in these category areas after school right now across the nation and said, this is what happens when we do this. This isn't, unlike what we're proposing, or unlike what's being proposed with the child tax credit, none of this is a theoretical, right? This is an observation of programs that exist. The only thing I would add to this is what Lance had mentioned in the second segment, which is it is insane that it is not part of school curriculum nationwide to provide some level of financial literacy and civics class. And the reason I throw civics in there is because one thing that we've seen locally, especially in small communities, is people leave places when they don't feel connections to them. And leaving costs money, it hurts communities' economies, and it costs us money to repair the community. And that's not just here, that's everywhere, right? Big city, little city, you don't want people leaving. You want to retain your people. And so, I mean, I think the civics part is key to people understand how the system works. They're more likely to be part of it. And if you give them the tool set, which is what I think this is all about, you're not relying on somebody who may not have, even if I'm a parent and I have the best of intentions for my child, if I don't know how to get them something better than what I have, no amount of money is going to change that. Right? I can write you a $2 million check, and that's not going to change anything about your ability to get your child for you to be able to help them better understand. Now, maybe you can send them to some great school and they can learn, but what we're talking about is skipping that step altogether and saying, let's just invest in the stuff that we know already works.
Well, you say, how do we triple our money? I mean, how do you really figure that? Well, but think about it. If you increase their earning potential, then when they get a job, they're going to make more money. They're going to pay more in taxes to support the system instead of getting money from the system to try to make ends meet. That's what people forget. The more you invest in young people and in job training and in education, then they go out and make more money, which then makes them tax-paying citizens, which then lowers the number of people who need help. Plus, there's more money available to help the people that need it. But we need to raise the minimum wage. And you say, oh, but small businesses. Okay, we're small business people. Okay, we understand that cost. But then everything goes up. Yes, that's called inflation. But you get the hands into, you're incentivizing work. And that, I think, that's part of that civics lesson, that if we all stay and we all work at something, I truly believe that makes it better. What people do, like Justin said, well, there's nothing here, so I'm leaving. Then it leaves nobody here to do the work to make this area better. And other regions then outperform. And then it's even harder to get people to come here, to make it like that. Because I was rewarded for hard work. And the system worked for me. The system is not working for young people now. So we need to change the system. The way to change the system, though, is not to give more handouts. It's to teach the value of hard work and to see the correlation between hard work and a better lifestyle.
Equip people with the tool set and give them the incentive to work, and it's amazing what happens. But the reality is, even as our economy has increased, the percentage of children living in poverty has increased.
And see, that's just
something
wrong.
is wrong about that.
Something is wrong in River City with that. That's just flat out wrong.
In 2020, we have 12.5 million children in this country that live in poverty. And that's the official poverty line, right? We're not even getting into the whole poverty line thing because we've talked about that before.
And how that number's figured and everything else. Let's just take that as the number, right?
Yeah, just 12 and a half.
Just accept it. And
just 12.5 million children, which, by the way,
how can you go to sleep at night?
17.5% of children in this country.
2 out of 10. 2 out of every 10 children in the United States tonight under the age of 18 are going to bed, are going to lay their head down somewhere in poverty. No wonder I have trouble going to sleep at night.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I think that's what this is all about, right? Is the idea of fixing this problem is noble, and it's absolutely something we have to do. The expanded child tax credit is not the most effective way to do it, and it's not rocket science for a better alternative. We know what we have to do. You have to break the generational cycle, and you do that by two things. What Lance said, you got to incentivize people to work, and second, you have to equip the children with the tools necessary to do what their parents couldn't do, you know? And I don't think
even the best intentioned parents.
Right,
Again,
exactly.
Well, nobody's blaming them because you can't teach something that you don't know anything about. And you didn't know it because you weren't taught it. That's not necessarily your fault. Doesn't make you a bad parent. It means that it's put your children behind the eight ball and making it difficult for them. And that's what we need to fix.
I am all for.
And yes, I'm pounding the table. That's not on Justin's soundboard making that sound. That's me pounding the table out of frustration. I thought I chopped enough wood yesterday by hand to get my frustrations out, but boy, you got it going again. 2 out of 10 children in America going to bed in poverty.
Hard to call yourself the world's best example when you have that situation. And the good news is, right, that's what we want to end on. It doesn't.
We can fix it.
We can fix it.
We can make it better.
It's not theoretical research. We're talking about observations of programs that exist. So all we got to do is say, and that was the last finding in it, Lance, that I think is so key. Demand for programs is so great that 2 out of every 3 applications, so these are people that want to do it, right? These are people out there trying to do it. 2 out of every 3 applications can't be funded. And that's people that want to do it. We're not even talking about people that need to do it who aren't doing it. 2 out of every 3 people that are trying to do it can't get the money to do it.
Who are interested in helping people.
And we're saying we got this big pot of money here that we're about to spend. Well, let's spend it to fund these people who are trying to do this stuff. Because we know it works.
Because it helps people more than the way we're planning on doing it.
Exactly. And we should be all about trying to do whatever the very best thing is. So.
And that's why we're here, folks, because our mission here at True Chat is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And we do not argue that there's a problem. We are pointing out that there's a better way, and we've got the proof to solve the problem that we started with. And that's what we want to do. And we need to have that conversation. We had it. Now you need to share it. Tell people they can find us on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere podcasts are found. And together, we can solve the problem.
The State of Us is available Tuesdays and Thursdays as a podcast first thing in the morning. And we're also heard in select talk radio markets, AM and FM radio stations across the country on the weekends. For The State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, Ohio, Lance takes the cake today on Qualmish. Nice round out. I think he has 4. I had 2. So I'm lagging here. I pick up this game on the upcoming episodes. So
it's built in for me to win. So
okay.
It's an upset when you win because I should win.
I'll change the rules.
I'm the one who picked. Yeah. We're big game players here, and we know the importance of understanding how the game is played. And me getting to pick the word and him hearing it for the first time on the show is a distinct advantage to yours truly.
I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to our producer, Bradley Butch. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.